Okay, so we've all heard those stories, right? Students who show up in a new country with almost nothing, and somehow, against all the odds, they end up at the top of their class. It really makes you wonder, what if the real key to their success wasn't about better schools or more resources, but something powerful happening inside them? Well, it's a puzzle that has fascinated researchers for years. I mean, you look at the research on how migrant students do in school, and it points in two totally opposite directions. It's a genuine paradox. So, on one side, you've got this idea called the immigrant paradox. It basically suggests that the optimism and drive that comes with starting a new life can actually push these students to do even better than their native-born peers. But then you have the complete opposite take, the downward assimilation theory. This argues that the disadvantages, discrimination, language barriers, not enough resources, are just too much to overcome. So, which one is it? What's the real story here? To try and crack this puzzle, researchers started digging around for a missing piece. Some kind of psychological clue that could explain the difference. And they landed on this really powerful concept called grit. Okay, so what is grit really? It's not just, working hard. It's this very specific mix of passion and persistence for things that take a long, long time to achieve. It's the ability to stick with your future, day in and day out, not just for a week, not just for a month, but for years. It's really about playing the long game. And what's so cool about this is it makes the whole idea of grit, well, real, tangible. We're not just talking about some fuzzy concept here. These are actual statements from the surveys they used in the research. It shows you that grit is about what you do. You're a hard worker. You don't let setbacks knock you down for long. And, crucially, you finish what you start. All right, so let's take this out of the lab and into the real world. Our first case study takes us to Tatarstan, a republic within Russia, where a big 2017 study looked at how grit played out for over 2,000 ninth graders. I mean, the first thing you'd think is, of course, right? You'd assume that going through all the challenges of moving to a new country would just naturally build more grit. But when the researchers actually crunched the numbers, they found something surprising. And here's the first big twist in the story. That simple theory, that migrant students just have more grit, it just didn't hold up. The average scores on those grit surveys were pretty much the same across the board. So the clue wasn't that simple after all. But, and this is the really crucial part, for some of these migrant groups, grit acted like a powerful performance booster. So even though their overall grit levels weren't any higher, the grit they did have was like supercharged. It was more impactful. It wasn't about having more of it, it was about it doing more for them. You see the difference? And this table just lays out the complexity perfectly. For first-generation migrants and those from Central Asia, their grit had a huge positive impact on their grades. It basically wiped out any potential gap. But then you look at another group, ethnic Russian migrants in Tatarstan, and for them, that grit boost just wasn't there. And they actually tended to lag behind their native peers.
Okay, so that's Tatarstan. But does this pattern, where GRI is a booster but the levels are the same, hold true everywhere? Well, our investigation continues. Let's jump to a second study from 2018, this time in a completely different part of Russia, Yaroslavl.
So, the question is, did the researchers find the same story in Yaroslavl? The answer? Nope, not even close. This time, the story was completely different. Get a load of this. In Yaroslavl, one specific group, migrants from the Caucasus region, had way higher levels of grit. I mean, significantly higher than both the native students and the other migrant groups. So this wasn't a story about impact anymore. This was a story about levels. And the researcher who ran the study was pretty direct about it. They basically said that the impressive academic progress of this particular group could be explained by their measurably higher levels of, well, what the study calls assertiveness, but it's really grit. In this case, just having more of that key ingredient was the game changer. Okay, so we've looked at two different regions with two totally different outcomes. What's the final verdict on our initial puzzle? What we're seeing here are two completely different paths to success. In Tatarstan, it was all about grit acting like a turbo boost, making whatever grit a student had more potent. But in Yaroslavl, it was way more straightforward. One group just had higher levels of grit to begin with, and that's what made the difference. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, grit is absolutely a crucial piece of the puzzle, but it's not some simple magic bullet. How it works isn't a one-size-fits-all explanation. The social context, the specific community you're in, where you come from,
it all changes how this powerful trait actually functions. Context, it turns out, is everything.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty profound thought. Okay, so we know grit matters. That's a huge step. But if we can see how it works in different ways, then the next great puzzle isn't just understanding it, it's figuring out if we can teach it. Can we actively cultivate it in all students and give everyone a better shot at reaching their goals? Now, that is the question.